Here's what's coming up on today's show.
If you have time, let's work on the cash flow that you have while you're working, and can we point more money to pay that mortgage off faster?
Welcome to the How Money Works podcast with Craig and Jennifer Moser of Maestro Wealth Advisors, serving you throughout the Triad of North Carolina for more than 30 years.
Welcome to How Money Works radio show, where financial wisdom meets real life experience, hosted by Craig and Jennifer Moser, founders of Maestro Wealth Advisors. They've been serving families and businesses for many years all around the Triad area. You can find them at their office in Winston-Salem and Greensboro, and we've got a great show lined up. We're going to get into our conversation with Craig as always, and if you need some help, reach out to the team at 833-RETIRE-WELL. That's 833-RETIRE-WELL. He is a certified financial planner and chartered retirement planning counselor, and founded Maestro Wealth Advisors with that one clear vision to provide quality, objective financial advice rooted in education and trust. And Craig, it's just me and you this week, my friend, so I guess I don't have to give Jennifer's bio right this minute, but how are you, buddy?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Doing just pretty good.
Living a dream.
Living the dream. Looking forward to talking with you a little bit today. Me and you have a good show. We're going to talk about taking out some trash because, it's that time of the year when you're starting to maybe clean up, get the holidays approaching, all that good stuff. But we're going to take out some financial trash, okay? So we're going to talk about some of that stuff.
Okay.
So kind of like the junk drawer, right? Sometimes you got to clean some stuff up. Well, sometimes you got to do that financially. So let's start with debt, right? At this time of the year, it's easy for people to start building up a little extra debt. Holidays are upon us, all that stuff. But when you're getting close to retirement, you want to start thinking about removing some of that debt.
It's a lot. So people come to me and we sit down and we do a plan and they give me a goal for income. So I have software that says, what do you want when you quit working? What's the cash flow part that you're planning on? We do it after tax. We inflate the number, and then I'll look at it, and they might be carrying a mortgage into retirement. They might have, the boat payment, 2 or 3 other things. And it's like, listen, you gave me an income goal and it looks pretty good, but are you factoring in the debt payment? So let's say you've got $1,500 a month on a house payment and maybe something else that kicks in, $300 to $500. All of a sudden you're tearing into your cash flow pretty hard. And think about this for a minute. You're rolling into retirement and you're carrying this debt, and it's going to be something you're going to still have to deal with. Maybe you sell the pontoon boat. Maybe you buy a different house, sell this one, and buy another one. But these are things that as you're working through your financial plan, you really, really need to think about. Because if you have, and I'll just use the mortgage because it's the easiest one. You've got a big house payment and you want to stay in the house. What do we do? It depends on how much time we have, candidly. If you're going to retire in a year or two, there's not much you can do. You're carrying that into debt if you're actually going to do it. But if you have time, let's work on the cash flow that you have while you're working, and can we point more money to pay that mortgage off faster? Because that seems to be the biggest one, or the one that shows up the most when we're doing planning. And it's like, you need to think about this because it's not what's coming in, it's what's going out. And the mortgage is a big daddy. I mean, it's something to think about.
Yeah, for sure. Dealing with how to balance, the day-to-day life and not getting too caught up with the Joneses and spending too much and getting into debt. All that stuff starts to really carry more weight, no pun intended, as you get closer to retirement. So again, we're talking about taking out some financial trash today with Craig, 833-RETIRE-WELL. Same thing with risk, Craig, right? So too much risk. Right now, at the time we're talking, bud, the market, after being super hot for several weeks, is being pretty volatile.
Well, anybody that knows me that has come to see me, I've been saying that the multiples on these stocks are really high. I mean, the prices are high versus what these companies are earning. And sooner or later, that's going to come back to haunt you. It's
right.
been so exciting. Everybody's made a boatload of money in the stock market. But have you ever asked yourself, why did things go up so much?
Yeah.
Could it be that our government created a lot of money, green paper, and it had to go somewhere? Looking back to maybe 2020 when we had all the COVID stuff going on, they printed a ton of money. So go look at this. Go to the federalreserve.gov or .org. I can't remember which dot it is, but you go to the Federal Reserve and it talks about the balance sheet history on there, and it shows how much they printed and how much sat on the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve. You can go to the U.S. debt clock, and you can see how much they printed from. They used 2000, and I'm using round numbers here. Something like 4.7 trillion was the M2, the monetary base at that time, and now it's like 26, 27 trillion. So obviously money came from somewhere. It didn't, grow itself, so they printed it.
Oh, I think we're at 28 trillion right now on the
I'm not sure, but I know it's a bunch of money.
It's
so
a lot, yeah.
It pushes things that can inflate up, and it really skews the strategies that good investors use. Warren Buffett, his Berkshire Hathaway is sitting on tons of capital. Why? Because if you read his stuff, he says basically things are too expensive. Why would I pay a high price for something? It's not worth it.
Yeah.
And he'll wait. And the guy's 95, so he can't wait too long, but he's pretty patient as an investor, and he's just not going to pay up, for these prices. I mean, if you're like I am, you look at the real estate prices and you just shake your head and you go, why is everything so expensive? So risk. When you put yourself into assets that can go up and down, risk assets is a way to say it, you have to be cognizant of the fact that sooner or later the high price will go down. What is your strategy to do that? How are you going to handle the volatility of an investment? So high flying for the last 3 years, it's been really great. 2023, we got rallied back up, and man, has it been something. It has been great. But if you're looking at I'll use NVIDIA, that's 57, 58 times earnings. If you look at AMD, much more than that. If you look at Palantir or, any of these really cool stocks, you're paying up like crazy for the potential for them to increase their earnings over time. So be careful. Don't take too much risk. So when you're building your portfolio, especially this last 5 to 10 years before retirement, you have a bunch of money already saved. Why put all of it at risk? You can do other things with that money to generate good cash flow. You can have some of it in safe. Depending on how far you are away from retirement, I'm not advocating a bunch of money in safe assets, but you could certainly add some cash flow in there if you know how to do it. Call us if you want to actually take a look at how you can increase the payments, interest payments, dividend payments, things that can pay you and pay you very regularly. And then the risk assets, you have to have that maybe not as much as you're used to doing given where we've been over the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Don't take too much risk with all of it. I'm not saying not to do it. I'm saying to look at it and say everything should have a good solid measure towards your goals, because there will be a day when those things go down, and dadgummit, you'll wish you had some other assets other than the hot stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Well, as Craig said, if you want to learn more, give him a call. It's 833-RETIRE-WELL, 833-RETIRE-WELL, or visit maestrowealth.com. That's maestrowealth.com to get some time onto the calendar as well. Lazy money, right? Yep. So we can talk about this a little bit. Money that's not growing enough to keep up with inflation. Now was a little bit better earlier, but we're starting to see Fed rates tick down and things of that nature. So, some people just feel good with a certain dollar amount in the old bank.
Yep. Well, I can't argue that, especially right now. But, people come to me and they'll have $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 sit back in a money market account, or a year and a half or 2 years ago, the bank was giving them a 5.3 CD rate, and it matured, and now they're at a 3.6, and they don't really think about it. And it's like, what is the inflation rate? Well, it's somewhere between 2 and 3% for sure. So if you can't earn that on your money, you're taking a step back. And then the other side of that is, how much are you paying in taxes for that money to be there? So let's say that you had $20,000 in interest income this year. That goes straight to the tax line. I mean, you're going to pay taxes on that $20,000. So you combine a low interest rate with taxes, and all of a sudden you're going broke slowly.
Yeah.
Very safely, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in those accounts. With that said, you also need money in safe assets if you're near retirement. Why? Because you're going to have to pull money out of those accounts, and you don't want those things to be volatile when you're drawing down on it. The volatility to the upside is exciting and it's wonderful, and you think you're smarter than the next guy. But when it starts getting hammered because it's too expensive, the other side of that is your lazy money looks pretty smart at that point, So you've got to put this into different compartments, if you will, and make sure that you have enough in each to be able to satisfy what your goals are short term. The cash flow part is probably a midterm type thing, something that's generating good revenues, but it's not risking principal to do it as much. And then the growth piece, you leave that alone. And when things are high, it's time to trim off the top. Take some of that profit and put it into the other ones that you will definitely use. So you've got to think about this different than just, man, I'm going to grow this as fast as I can and I'm not going to worry about volatility as you get older, I guess is the way to say it.
Yeah, for sure. Right. So you got to have some plans. You got to have some strategies in place. And that's what the team does, right? So, I mean, it's what you guys do day in and day out. You've been helping families for a long time. So, folks, if you're ready, long time. So, if you're ready to take control of your financial journey, call them. Get on the calendar at 833-RETIRE-WELL, 833-RETIRE-WELL, or visit maestrowealth.com. That's maestrowealth.com. Take that first step towards clarity and confidence, and let the team know you need some help. Schedule some time that's convenient for you to get on the calendar. I know the holidays are upon us, but that's no reason not to pick up the phone. They'll schedule you for a time that works well for you, everybody, so you don't have to stress about all that, holiday calendar stuff. Just let them know you need some help. 833-RETIRE-WELL, or visit them online at maestrowealth.com. That's maestrowealth.com. Craig's got more than 35 years of experience helping people get to and through retirement. He is a financial advisor and a certified financial planner, and an all-around cool dude. And he and I are going to talk about finding the silver linings this go around on the show, Craig. Look, there's always something negative going on in the world, and certainly negative things happening in our lives. And from a financial standpoint, when negativity comes in, it sucks, and it brings you down a little bit, right? And it gets you worried about your finances, especially if you're getting close to retirement. And again, you've been helping people for 30-plus years, so you've seen people go through a lot of negatives. Yeah.
Lots of different stuff.
Lots of stuff. So let's talk about when some of these things hit. Okay. What's some ways that we can maybe refocus and look for some silver linings, especially in the spirit of the holiday season, right? Okay. So we'll dive in here. So your company says, you got to go, right?
You out of here.
Retirement's coming earlier than you expected.
At least from that place.
We had somebody ask us a question a few weeks back, and the term he used was he got displaced. And I thought, boy, that's a really cold way of putting it.
Yeah.
So what's some silver linings if you're being forced into early retirement, Craig?
Well, I mean, are they going to give you a severance? Maybe. I'll give you examples. We had a lovely couple. He came in. He was a guy that worked at Reynolds, made good income, had saved well. And we were about a year from him actually retiring. And he comes up about this time in 2023, and he said, guess what? They want me to leave. And I'm like, okay. And he said, they're going to give me a year severance.
Oh, okay.
And he said, what do you think? And I said, so you're going to get paid the same amount, as if you worked. You're going to get a lump sum, and you're asking me, what do I think? And I said, yes, let's do that, because that got you to the finish line without having to work for those years. And if he had wanted to, he didn't need to, but he could have worked and collected that severance as well if he could have gotten another job.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so it all depends on what the circumstances are.
And if you had the numbers, if you have your numbers ran and this happens to you,
right,
you're in a better position to know, okay, cool, I'll take the money and I'll go into retirement early.
Because he may not have gotten severed. It was like, will you take the severance? And so we ran with and without.
Okay.
It worked, even with no severance. But, the risk was I won't get a severance and I get knocked off here in the next couple of months, or I take the money and run. And he did. And it worked out. In that case, we were able to make that work great. And they were, obviously a year ahead of plan and still had the same cash flow.
Nice. Yeah. So that's one.
They did drop the money in at year end. So he had 1 year with bigger taxes.
Okay,
And
that's something to think
you know,
about, right?
Yeah, I mean, because if you're a company, you're wanting to expense that out as quickly as you can. So obviously, you know, before the end of the year, they threw in the next severance, and that cost a little bit. But I mean, the math still worked very well. And you had said it, but let's talk about it for a minute. If you have done your planning, which means we've ran scenarios to show, can I retire today? What does it look like if I do it according to my plan? When do I take the cash flows that I have? You know, do I have a pension? In this case, he did. When am I going to take this Social Security check, and how much more will it be? Can I make it a benefit for my wife? All of these things, plus the money you have saved, measured against what your income goals are how we start to really get our head around how do we make this the best it can be given the situation that's in front of me.
Yep, and that's what we're talking about, right? Silver linings, finding a way to see how can we turn some of these negative things that do happen in life, especially as we're getting closer to retirement, in finding those positives in them, right? So 833 retire well. If you want to get your numbers run, so that if something does happen, you kind of know where you stand. I mean, that's half the point right there, half the battle. So 833 retire well. All right, Craig. We also get emails off the time into the show. People ask questions. We talk about them, fairly often here as well. And people a lot of times will say, "Man, I didn't realize my life insurance premiums were going to go up like that." Right? I got to a certain age and boom. Right? So, how do you kind of handle that? What's some things to think about? What's some positive spins on this, if you can find some there?
Well, the thought is there's really only two real circumstances that could be. You had a term policy, the Dave Ramsey approach, and 20 years or whatever the term on your term was is over, and now the price goes up substantially. Well, that's one of them. Or you bought one of those interest rate universal life policies back when they were showing 7% interest rates or 8% interest rates, and you underfunded it, and now it's about to run out of money. So, I can talk you through that, but not on the radio, and show you what the differences are. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to look at it and ask yourself some important questions. Do you need the life insurance? If you do, are you healthy enough to qualify for new? Could you, another question, take the group term at work, and is that something that will be portable later? So there's things to look at as we're working through the life insurance question. But the biggest one is the need for your life insurance there today versus when you purchased it? I'll use me as an example. At 42, I bought a 20-year term. And that was going to work for my youngest child. In case I died, I would have that $1 million policy to pay off all the bills and make sure that he still went to college. And at age 62, guess what? I didn't, the term went up from like 100 and something a month to 1,600 a month.
Wow.
And going up every year. I didn't pay it. So did I need it? Not like I did at 42. You see what I'm saying? So we have to measure. We have to look at, do I need life insurance? Can I buy it? And if I can't buy it easily, can I get it through something at work that's guaranteed? There's a lot of things to think about in the life insurance side. But nonetheless, I see it more than you would think. The premiums went up either because it was term or because it was a poorly designed universal life policy.
Okay, some good thoughts there. That's a hefty jump up, boy. No, you're fine. 833 retire well to get onto the calendar with Craig and Jennifer and the team to talk about, some of these things are going on in your world, how to, maximize the situation. That's all really part of what the whole retirement review is about, and the conversation is going through all these different little pieces that make up the retirement planning process. So again, 833 retire well. Craig, earlier we were talking about the first early retirement. You talked about the severance or maybe some sort of a pension, right?
Yep.
Well, what if they are eliminating pensions and you get no option? Because a lot of times people struggle, right? Do I take the pension? Do I take the lump sum? What if it's just lump sum only? What's some things to think about?
I haven't seen where they can force you into taking the lump sum.
If they're eliminating it as a company, maybe?
I haven't really seen that.
Okay.
I mean, if we have I guess it could happen. I can't argue that point, but let's talk about, do you take a pension or do you take the lump sum?
Okay.
Because
That's
a lot of times, you have to look at the economic benefit of it. Here's the positive of pension. When you turn it on, there's a check there for at least your life. Depending on what you select, you could stretch it out in some form or fashion over the life of your spouse. So that's a paycheck every month. That's kind of nice. Okay. But if you have ran your numbers and you go, I don't know if I want to take that pension because it might take me 17 to 18 years before I'm even on taking the lump sum that they offered me. Now you've got to take a look at it and say, can I do better? Do I need the income to get me through to the end? Or if I take this lump sum and invest it in some form or fashion and create a cash flow for myself, can I do better? The argument I hear all the time about taking the lump sum is, what happens if I die young? The money that I would have gotten over those years goes back into the pension pool. If you take the lump sum and if you pass away early, obviously when you look at that, it would have been better to take the lump sum versus the payments because you would have still had money for them to inherit later on. But nonetheless, make sure that you do it well. You have measured both taking the pension. Okay, let's take this pension, see what the outcome would be if I lived to a certain age, and also run the lump sum to that same age and say, can I make this work for the rest of my life and still have access to the capital that I had, that would not have been there in the regular pension. So it's a way to look at it and say, now I have access to the money. If you don't blow it but use it properly, the money's there for your family to inherit if you invest well, I guess is the way to say it. But again, it all comes down to the planning part. Have you looked at it and been genuine in how you approached it? That's what we try to give you, and make sure that, okay, I have really vetted this and I can take that lump sum and still make it work. Now, I'm going to make a general statement. This is not a rule, but usually if they're going to accelerate and give you a lump sum, it's about 17 to 19 years in advance. So there's a formula called time value of money, and they'll put some sort of rate of return on it and show you what the discounted rate would be as if it came back to you. I'm not trying to get fancy. I'm just saying that's how they do it.
Right.
And say, all right, is this going to make sense if I take it now? You don't want to bury it in a jar in the backyard and just pull money out every month. It has to have a return. But still, more times than not, the lump sum will give you a better option if you have that available to you.
Well, at the end of the day, right, you got to know your numbers. You got to know your options. I mean, sometimes I think we make these rash decisions because life happens, it throws us a curveball, and we just react versus, maybe being better armed with, the information we might need.
Or you see a big number in front of you and you take it, and it was a wrong decision.
That's true.
There's two sides to the comment. But at the end of the day, if you can run those numbers both ways, which we can help you to do, and then say, this one works as good as that one, or this one is better than that one, then it helps you to make the good decision rather than, making an emotional decision. Yeah. I don't know how you are, but if somebody offered me some big number, I'm going to pay attention to it. Right. But what do I lose in the interim? So I've got to make sure I know all of the data.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm going to take a look. That's for sure. But you got to have all the data. So, I got one more here, but we are kind of up against the clock, so we'll see if we can do it. You'll hurry? Okay. All right. My brother kind of had this happen to him, right? He got close to retirement, Craig. So, basically the company got bought, right? And It's like, I'm so close to retirement. We saw this a lot during COVID too, where they're asking me to go back to work to the office, and I've been working from home for a year or whatever. I don't want to get used to the new people. I don't want to learn, whatever the case is. So if you're that close, and the company's been sold, what's some things to think about?
Can I do it now?
Like we said earlier,
not,
right? Yeah.
Right. I mean, these are numbers. And once you have gotten control of the numbers, here's what I can get at this age from Social Security. If there's a pension, here's what I can collect now, or I can wait until the higher pension payout. I have this much in my 401k. Maybe I can do better than the target date fund. There's things that you can do. Yeah. Once you have control of the numbers, now you can say, I can do this now. Or the other side of that coin is, I really can't do this now.
So I have to meet these new people and go to work. Right? So I have to meet these new people and go to work, or whatever the situation is.
I mean, you have to go to work for a little while longer, but maybe not a lot longer. It's a gap closing thing. So if you take it now, how much money do you have to pay that gap in income? Or you make a bad decision, maybe take Social Security early, or there's a number of things you need to look at. But at the end of the day, if you can say, okay, Moser, run this with a 2-year earlier, I'm going to retire thing. If it works, it works. And the other piece is, Social Security. The other piece is What about health insurance? There's a lot of what ifs, but we can help you to think through that if that's something that you're looking at.
Yeah, and you got to have the information, folks. That's what we talk about each and every week here on the program. It's just getting down and having that conversation so that you know what you're dealing with when life throws those curveballs, because it will. And that's why we call the show How Money Works, right? So get onto the calendar, come on in and have a conversation. You've been listening to How Money Works Radio with Craig and Jennifer Moser. If they got those 2 offices conveniently located in Winston-Salem and Greensboro with 3 decades plus of experience, Craig and Jennifer have dedicated their careers to helping families get to and through retirement. So get yourself onto the calendar. Start your own journey towards financial confidence at 833-RETIRE-WELL. That's 833-RETIRE-WELL, or visit maestrowealth.com. That's maestrowealth.com, because at Maestro Wealth Advisors, it's not just about managing money. It's about helping you live your best life today and tomorrow. We'll see you next week here on the program. Thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. If you have any questions about what we've discussed, remember, you can get a complimentary financial review with the team at Maestro Wealth Advisors by calling 833-RETIRE-WELL, or go online to howmoneyworksradio.com for other great resources and ways to reach the team. You can also check the show notes of today's episode for our contact information as well. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite app so you never miss an episode. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and all the most popular apps. For Craig and Jennifer Moser, I'm Mark Killian. We'll talk to you next time on the How Money Works podcast.
Securities offered through Cetera Wealth Services, LLC, member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered through Cetera Investment Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity.